But do appreciate you being with us today. And more than that, the journey that you're on as well, your partnership with us collectively in making use of the Microsoft Security Platform. What we can promise you for today is a deep dive into that technology, that platform, a discussion with yourselves. I'd love to listen and learn about how you're using it, what else we could do on the Microsoft side, how we could improve that even further. And then with our experts in the room as well, from Cocho and from Yubico as well, I think we're all set for a fantastic deep conversation around the security platform, all things security, compliance and privacy. We really, at Microsoft, we grouped the three together, and it's pretty fair to say that our journey in this area goes back a bit more than 20 years actually, 20 years in January, when Bill Gates at the time was the head of Microsoft, and he published something called the Trustworthy Computing Memo, which charted a different course, frankly, for Microsoft at the time. We were, at that stage, a consumer, predominantly consumer company, but he realized, and his team around him realized, that future trust in terms of our collective organizations and perhaps our clients would rest on the security capabilities, the security controls, that no organization could really properly harness the potential of the software, and now the cloud, of course, unless those security controls, privacy and compliance capabilities were built in. And it really triggered a bit of a change of course, because at that point his message was to all the engineering teams, hey, where we have a priority call to make between perhaps a new feature in Excel or Office, whatever it might have been, or a new security capability in the underlying platform, we must prioritize the latter. And it's really set the direction of the course we've been on over the last number of years. In my role, I'm privileged to have the opportunity to see some of that come to fore, and in terms of the security updates that you will have seen, perhaps you're using yourselves. The last 6 months alone, for example, I think there's been over 300 new features into the platform, and our commitment really is to continue to innovate, continue to invest. It's at the core of everything Microsoft does, whether it's Azure or Dynamics or Office indeed. The underlying platform that's just so critical to all of that is security, and the work you do in taking advantage of that capability, getting it deployed and configured in line with best practice so as to protect your organizations. For us, particularly these cloud services, they're no good to anyone unless they're deployed, our end users are getting an optimal productivity experience, and that they're secured all the way from initial concept and ideation through to when they're actually published and deployed in the cloud. So important to us. So thank you for all the work you do in that regard. It's much appreciated. Okay, so safe to say we're all security professionals, IT professionals, I think, gathered here. And some of this will be familiar to you, but I thought just as we go into the platform itself and how we want to help you protect it all, the landscape that we face, no surprise, the threat landscape, the volume and the sophistication of attacks, always on the rise. These are the latest stats we had there from a couple of weeks ago. The ones that caught my eye in particular, like when you look at now the average cost of a breach over the last 12 months in 2022 into 23, over 4 million. And then on the identity side, where just looking at like today's agenda, I think is fantastic. I think the combination of sessions we have to go deep on identity, on multi-cloud. It amazes me on the identity side, the number of organizations who haven't yet done what we'd recommend in terms of the basics, in terms of cyber hygiene. I'm sure there won't be anyone in this room, but across our broader ecosystem, we see the telemetry on the Microsoft side in terms of Office 365 tenants. And you look at something like MFA, for example, we're still on about 25-26% of those tenants with MFA activated. And I'd like to share with you actually some of the stats around when unfortunately organizations do fall victim to cybercrime, to cyber attacks, when Microsoft are called in to help them get them back on their feet and to recover. I'll show you some of the trends that we see in there. And no surprise, getting identity and MFA right at the core it's a common pattern we see in organizations who just haven't done the basics. And again, the work that you do with us across your organizations to protect on that front is so important. And some of these are, again, our most recent stats in terms of the trends we see. Probably not a surprise to you, the number of suspicious emails that we're blocking now, up over 37 billion. And then that security signal that we see. You know, we do feel, frankly, I think at Microsoft, we have a responsibility, a duty of care to help protect every citizen, every organization from cyber threat. Why? Because of the breadth of the platform. You know, those 2 billion PCs, everything from Xbox to Live to Hotmail, there's a lot of security telemetry and signal that comes in through that. And then our role is to distill that down, particularly to take advantage of AI and ML to try and automate and bolster all our customer defenses in that regard. So the security telemetry is so important that we put that to maximum use and maximum advantage in terms of securing estates. So this was some of the research that I mentioned I wanted to share with you. It's kind of hot off the press from our annual digital defense report, where what you see on screen there is, you know, again, we've got an instant response team. And so when we're called in, I mean, often these are organizations that perhaps, you know, haven't adopted zero trust. They haven't taken advantage of recommended best practices and unfortunately find themselves in the position where they fall victim to cybercrime. And when I saw these, I think, you know, if you're an organization whereby your security posture is pretty robust, hopefully this helps as a bit of a guide to say, yes, tick, tick, we've got that covered, we're feeling that we're in a reasonably well-balanced position. Whereas perhaps an organization who, they're on that journey with a bit more to do. For me, it did provide a helpful roadmap, you know, where Cocho in particular could work with you to help bolster those defenses overall across your devices, your apps, your end users, your identities, everything it is, that breadth that you have to protect now, which of course has increased exponentially over recent years, and particularly with the rise of hybrid working as well. But you look at some of these stats, look at the MFA one there. So 90% of the organizations that we helped to get back on their feet to recover, 90% didn't have MFA either on or it wasn't mandatory for user accounts. Excessive admin credentials, 98%. Such an important area of focus. Then up here, so use of privileged access workstation, so 100% hadn't applied best practice or recommended best practice, if you like, on that front. And we're happy to share these. I don't know, some of you may have seen the digital defense report, whereby we go pretty deep in terms of what we're seeing and tracking nation state activity and indeed cybercrime as well. And the whole aim of this, our ethos in this is that we share as much as we possibly can because of that threat signal that we see. And we want to make it visible in terms of the bad actors, what we see them doing, and then trying to predict based on their behavior what they may do next. So all of that is available to you. And then of course, working with Cocho to help put the foundations in place. Because, you know, our strong belief is that while yes, the threat landscape has increased, doing the basics in terms of cyber hygiene, security hygiene, still protects against the bulk, 98% of attacks. Indeed, if you look at, you know, the theater of cyber war right now in terms of the Ukraine, they moved 15 of the 16 ministries up to the cloud just over a year ago, last February, because they realize, you know, in that scenario, they were coming up against a cyber power, if you like, in terms of the cyber ammunition, if I can put it that way, that Russia have at their disposal. Even before the Ukraine attack, we'd been tracking a number of the groups, the hacking activist groups within Russia. And we'd already seen in the previous year, 58% of the cyber attacks and threats that we had tracked had originated from Russia. And of course, then they turned that firepower on the Ukraine. But their best defense, and that's been winning, frankly, over what they've faced in terms of an onslaught, has been by moving to the cloud, taking advantage of the inbuilt security capability that's afforded them. And so, you know, those areas in the top right, and again, for you, I'm sure I'm speaking to, preaching to the converted, if that's the phrase. These would be areas that'd be familiar to you, areas that you may well either have in hand or have plans to address. And, you know, of course, they're high-level headings. We can go much deeper, and in particular, with Cocho, they can absolutely help you ensure robust posture across all of those areas. So important. So then I'd like to talk a little bit around what we hear in terms of common focus areas amongst organizations such as yourselves, and then where we're at on the Microsoft side right now. So kind of our current priorities, and hopefully there's a match between these two. You tell me. So that risk profile, clearly, I think on the CISO agenda, he or she, in terms of their team, that end-to-end risk profile, that end-to-end security posture, and leaving no doors unlocked or no easy threat vectors for bad actors is clearly the priority. And some of the things we've been seeing more recently, of course, starting with identities is the absolute foundation, the bedrock. But then more recently, the move into IoT devices, are there easy access points in that area as being more of a priority that we're seeing? Because we know, many of those threat actors, they log in, don't they? They don't break in. And particularly where perhaps over a course of recent times that user identities have been protected, then we need to expand that out into workloads, into IoT devices in particular, so as to ensure the end-to-end security posture across your environment. We recognize, today is really about how can we help you protect more with less, because we know the amount of work you have that you face in terms of threat telemetry, the environment that you're protecting, and probably resources as well, right? We're certainly within Microsoft, we're on this constant journey to try and be more efficient, to literally do more with less, and how can we use the tech, AI and ML in particular, to help us be more effective in that regard. And I would imagine, for organizations such as yourselves, you may face similar challenges. We'd like to help you with that in terms of consolidating your platform. Where we're focused then is Siemens XDR still at the heart of where we're innovating right now. Multi-cloud, so Dave's session to next just after our opening, we'll go deeper on that. And you'll see a lot of our new product announcements and where our engineers are focused right now is in those two areas in particular. On the industry side, we're making a conscious effort, we did this year, to recognize perhaps if you're in a regulated environment or your specific industry, if that puts compliance requirements on you, or there's particular risk assessments or business cases that you need to comply with to try and help to go as deep as that on that topic as we can. And then new product launches. The Defender suite has been at the heart of our strategy, continues to be. Our chief exec made the commitment around this investment over 5 years of $20 billion. And we're seeing that come through in terms of our new product announcements. External attack surface management, threat intelligence was pretty recent as well, just at our Ignite conference. Entra permissions management, again on the identity side. And then areas such as Sentinel with SAP. That integration was something we were hearing was really important, particularly finance professionals within organizations running SAP. So those integrations to bring more of that richness into Sentinel, give you one single dashboard, and ideally to reduce the amount of alert noise that comes with that as well, so you can be more effective. And your teams, your SOC teams, can be as efficient as possible has been a big focus for us. So, looking back a little, I've been in this particular role, only a year and a half, but at Microsoft a bit longer than that. And it's interesting just thinking back, to some of these security features, basic things now that we all take for granted, of course. But I remember well, I'm at Microsoft probably about 15 years, so in around this sort of time frame here, whereby at the time, the big focus was, hey, how can we make teams more productive, increase collaboration, how do we empower our end users or employees to do more with the tech that they have? But then building security into that quite quickly rose to the top of the agenda, which I think for your roles and kind of your organizations has probably carried through since then. It certainly has with ours. And then look down through the years, the expansion in terms of the platform, you get up to closer to kind of where we are right now, or the last couple of years in terms of the capability. The whole focus really has been adding to enriching the core platform. And like I was saying kind of a little while ago, that's really what it's all about. How can we make Azure and Office 365 as secure as possible? And then as you extend that to your line of business apps as well, taking advantage of that capability that we can provide directly from that cloud security platform. This piece is reason we're proud of this. Because I do remember kind of coming into this space and talking to organizations such as yourselves, and they said, yeah, we see Microsoft on the desktop, might be interested to learn about your SOC perhaps. But there were, of course, deep best of breed providers, at that point where Microsoft, I feel, have gone on a journey, both in terms of what we built into the core platform. You think of Windows, all the recent, or the majority of the recent features have really been on the security side, as well as then adding to brand new categories that we've built into. And indeed, just locally here in the UK, so this dedicated security team, though it goes back 20 years, this team's 2 years old and continues to expand. It's kind of, and now, if you look at the top of our organization, our leader in the US now sits direct into Satya Nadella, our chief exec, so security, at a voice at that table for every product that we design, right from inception all the way through. The capabilities then that the team will bring you deeper on today and the priorities, these haven't changed that much. They're still those core pillars. Zero trust, everything that we do in that space is an absolutely fundamental starting point, a platform. But then recognizing that as the threat landscape has expanded, as the behaviors that we see, and you see, I'm sure, from some of the bad actors, as they get more creative all the time, is this constant race to keep ahead of them. And what we're excited about right now, you think about ChatGPT, for example, where might that go in terms of the battle against bad actors? How can that enable and help all of us? I'm not here with any new product announcements to share on that today, but what I do know is our engineering teams have been playing with that technology now for about 2.5, 3 years. We feel that partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI that's our future. It's kind of fundamental to where we're going. And you'll see more and more capability come on stream as a result. Multi-cloud, we recognize that one of Dave's first slides has got an Amazon logo up there, it's got a Google logo up there. Probably in my early days of Microsoft, they wouldn't have been there, but I think we absolutely embrace multi-cloud because we know that you do, the industry does, the ecosystem does, and it's, Gartner will talk to, I think they talk about 70% of organizations will have a multi-cloud strategy. And we want to help organizations to be secure and be defended on whatever cloud platform they've chosen. On the data side, so data security, protecting and governing that it's been interesting. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot, particularly during the pandemic, of, for example, insider risk management, data loss prevention, suddenly rising right up the agenda. Now, you'd probably say for obvious reasons. You think about IP theft, you think about some of the risks you will face, while probably the external environment you can kind of get to grips with, you can take in the telemetry, you can take in research and insight from organizations such as us, but the insider piece as well, protecting your end users, and whether it's through accidental or intended data leakage, for example, those controls built into the platform has been a big area of focus for us and will continue to be. I'll show you, you may have seen it, the new adaptive protection that's come into play in that. I've got it on one of my slides later on. But it is about helping you to protect it all, with one platform whereby you can go deep, you can bolster your team's knowledge, skills on the platform. One of the things I get to do in my role is to work a lot with the NCSC, with the police cyber resilience centres across the country, and then indeed with some of the apprentice programs and the upskilling initiatives that we have. And it's such a massive priority. Like we will, next week I think it is, we launch a new cyber skills report where we've probably all heard that figure of about 3 million open roles coming by by 2 years' time, 2025. And so a lot of the work we do now is really thinking about, hey, how can we help people either coming out of university consider a career in cyber, particularly if from those groups that are underrepresented within our workforce. And then thinking about others who perhaps have gone one particular career path, but then are interested in diversifying and moving across to consider security in cyber. It's a massive priority for us. We made a commitment in the UK to train or to upskill 1.5 million people broadly across tech, of which cyber is one of the lead pillars. We're on about 900,000 so far, so still a distance to go, but we just think in terms of UK as a whole and all the work that we do protecting citizens, organizations, that we can't do that without the help of industry as a whole, upskilling and diversifying that skill set. But the portfolio then, so we want to help you have a simpler environment, hopefully simpler life in terms of the tools that you're asked to manage, the consoles that your teams perhaps look at each day, and then how can we enrich them? And particularly as that threat landscape, again, as the bad actors get more creative, how can we help you take the telemetry from the 65 trillion signals, build that into automatic defenses, replicate that out across endpoints, mobile, server, IoT, SQL, whatever it may be, so that you've got the very latest threat signatures, that they're replicated, updated in real time, and then that we can really put the AI to work to help you be more effective, or as effective and productive as you possibly can. But across the product sets, so Defender, you'll hear plenty more on that as Dave goes deeper on that in the next session. Sentinel. Entra is our new branding for all things identity, where there's quite a lot of innovation. It's still core to our security posture. Intune, we have a session on today as well, looking forward to that. And then more broadly on Purview and Priva. Priva is pretty new. I think we launched in October time, whereas Purview, from what I've seen and the conversations I've had with organizations such as yourselves over the last couple of years, I've really seen that one rise in terms of the priority from whether it's your leadership teams or boards, etc., that whole compliance agenda. And we continue to expand in that area with a big launch there a couple of weeks ago. And then underpinned by security expertise from leading partners like Cocho, so important to help you get that deployed and full value out of the platform. So just very high level, because we'll go deeper during the day. These two products combined, really at the heart of the investment we're making. It's really interesting because, whereby perhaps organizations started with protecting their endpoints and then started realizing actually there's other threat vectors here that we need to expand to. Similarly within Microsoft, that's where we began, but then as we added Sentinel top, it became as important in terms of the various underlying platforms that are feeding telemetry up to give you an effective dashboard to help make your SOC team as efficient as they can be. Or if you're using services from a professional organization, that you got that interaction right, so that you operationalized your SOC in conjunction with partners, but helping you get the best out of the underlying security tech is how we think about it. And that will continue to be at the heart of our investments. And then Defender, we started on that journey, particularly on endpoints, but then we expanded out as the threats facing customer organizations have expanded, and our commitment is to continue on that journey. Cloud security then, really, both for Azure, where, of course, our objective is to make Azure the most secure cloud that it can be, but then, as I say, to recognize that it's about what can we also port and configure as well for other cloud platforms. Because we want to help defend against evolving threats, known threats today, all built into those two products. And then on Entra, three categories really. So securing access, visibility and control, and then identity verification. And here you'll see, these adaptive policies are interesting because you're starting to see them come through now across a number of the products. Here on Entra, but also on Purview as well. I'll show you that in a moment. Where we're really taking our learnings from conversations with organizations such as yourselves, what we've seen in terms of use of the platform. And then how can we develop that? How can we put AI in particular to better use in terms of predicting and helping you respond to that range of user scenarios that you want to protect? And Purview. Now, as I think about these three, data governance, protection, then risk and compliance management, I think just reflecting on where I've seen the focus, I think the data mapping, of course, for every organization has got to be the starting point, knowing where your unstructured and unstructured data lives. Have you categorized that? Have you thought about how you can protect that on its life cycle through from where it's created to where it's shared, and eventually when that data then needs to be retired, those documents or files need to be retired. So that full life cycle journey, getting that piece perhaps not fully covered and protected is where we've seen organizations fall foul in terms of, you think about GDPR, you think about the activity that the Information Commissioner's Office, for example, will have oversight of. It's such a priority, particularly we see that in the enterprise space, but organizations of all sizes, of course, you'll have requirements put upon you, I'm sure, that we'd like to help with. And particularly, obviously, the more sensitive categories of data to prevent accidental sharing, to help you classify and govern that at scale, so to make it manageable, given the massive rise in data volumes that you're likely contending with. And then I mentioned the insider risks and compliance. With Priva, so what we saw there was many organizations who are taking advantage of, let's say, SharePoint Online Exchange. So you've done the work of that migration, taken advantage of those cloud solutions, but then often from typically a data protection officer or privacy manager, privacy officer, or perhaps legal, there's requirements there that they need to fulfill. You think about data minimization or data overexposure. Knowing where that PII sits was the reason that we created Priva. And the idea really is to say, okay, so it's fantastic that you've gone on that journey to the cloud. Now can we help you with that insight around where your data sits, allow you to put in controls and prompts where perhaps some of your employees, your end users, are taking actions that may cause your organization to fall foul of some of your data privacy policies. So we want to make it so that balance between being compliant, but then in a way that doesn't over encumber the end user, so that the end user experience is maintained. And that one is pretty new. We're on a journey where we've got the first bunch of organizations starting to trial it. For any of you who may have particular needs or requirements in that space, we'd love to have a conversation, and with help from Cocho as well. It's one that I just think there's a nascent need for that out there, and it's quite a nice thing where the work has been done on the cloud journey, that then you should have access to new capabilities. And for me, that's a great example of what's possible. And then the last one for me, because we go much deeper on this later on today, I remember this one well from my early days here, where 90% of organizations were using System Center, SCCM on-prem, of course, and then Intune came to the party. Took us a little while to get it right. I remember the very early days with Mobile Iron, AirWatch, etc. But I feel that one now, like we got to this point through years of effort and innovation and engineering, whereby now, our whole vision here is that it's any device that we can manage with a single unified tool. So whether that's iOS, Mac, etc., on the Windows side, mobile devices. And particularly back to this point about protecting more with less and helping you leverage that one platform so that you have a simpler environment, a more cost-effective environment. I see this one come up quite a lot. Our aim is to try and save you money, frankly. We believe particularly on the capabilities that perhaps you're already got entitlements to in your licenses, if they're E5 or E3, whatever it may be. We'd love to work with you to get them enabled, capabilities such as Intune. Typically in a business case, we see substantial cost savings. I mean, overall of the suite, we'd aim to save you, if we can, 50-55%, but I know it's organization by organization. It depends on your current environment, but that's where we'd like to go and help. And then the last thing before I pass across, I just wanted to bring this up because it's very recent. It was a feature that we released that, for me, really just underscores the path that we're on. It's a Purview feature, and it's showing this journey whereby, the more intel now that we have in terms of user behavior, we can track at an individual level as well as a role and profile level what we're seeing them do. And then across time, we've got these options in real time. So dynamic activity, do we need to, based on the risk posture, block this activity? And some examples there, probably stand out as behaviors that do look to be high risk. Or is it a block and override? Or is it a lower level of action? So a policy tip, for example, where perhaps it's inadvertent, perhaps it's an education opportunity. And so this AI-enabled dynamic capability to increase each organization's risk posture and bolster your defenses is really where we're headed. That's at the core of what our engineering teams are working on. That's where our innovation and our investment is going.